So that's how I met Stephen G. Stephen G has over 25 years banking experience. Most notably, in the last 13 years, he has done probably over 800 workouts of both REOs and notes. He sold at his bank over $100 million worth of REOs and notes on behalf of his bank. I believe he's going to keep the bank that he works for confidential so that he can share more things with you and not have to worry about those things. It's not very important exactly what bank he's referring to when he's talking about. We are very privileged to have him. I am so excited to have him. He is really, if there's anyone that I could think of who can peel back the layers of how it really works in a bank, he sold over $100 million worth of REOs and notes on behalf of a bank. So, without further ado, I would really like to, and he's going to I'd like him to explain what he does, because when you look at his resume, when you look at what he does, there's so much there, you almost don't know what to say. So, everybody, could you do me one favor and stand up? Stand up. And give a huge welcome to Steve.
Thank you.
Told you they're a good group.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. I have about 28 years of banking experience. Several years in the accounting, doing call reports, putting together financials. Some years in lending, and the last 13, 14 years in workouts, selling REO properties, loans and modifications, forbearance agreements, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm here to do today is I'd like to share with you some of my experiences. And the things I talk about today are not specific to any bank, okay? Just in generality, okay? So why don't we get started, all right? Let's see here. Let's open this up first. All right. What bank should I contact? Why do some banks sell notes at a discount and others will not? Okay. How do I identify banks that are willing to sell? And where do I look? Okay. Often, every time I go to a speaking engagement, people say to me, Steve, I contacted these banks that are troubled banks and failed banks or whatever the case may be. And first of all, I have a hard time getting anyone to ever return my call. And second of all, they don't even want to talk to me. Okay. Let me elaborate a little bit on that. All right. Banks, why do some banks sell at a discount and others will not? Capital. Capital. That's what it comes down to. Okay. Banks, troubled banks, are normally banks with extensive workout numbers, non-accruals, REO properties, non-performing assets, and they can't afford to sell notes at a discount. Because if they sell a note at a discount, they take a further hit, a capital hit. They can't afford to give up capital. They have to work it in-house, and they have to work it the best that they can. Okay? Now, that's not saying that they won't sell something if the price is right. Okay? But that's just saying that, generally speaking, you're going to have a much more difficult time with a troubled bank than you are with a different bank that's doing well. All right? How do I identify banks that are willing to sell? Well, I'm going to go forward just a little bit, okay? And the next question is, where do I look? All right? Where do I look? Well, the FDIC.gov web link. Oh, okay. Well, how do I do that?
And also, just might want to go up in front of this because it just.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I could cut across.
I did not want to interrupt a single second of that. That was really difficult for me to do, so I'm out of here. Other than everything you were saying was awesome.
Well, now we're done. Ah, there you go. Mel, thank you very much. All right. All right, so how do I identify banks that are willing to sell, and where do I look? All right, FDIC.gov. All right, go to that web link, and every bank fills out a call report. All right, a call report is an extensive production of financial information for each and every each and every bank. And it's done on a quarterly basis. And remember that now, because quarterly is going to be important, okay? These are just a few of the statements that are out there for any given bank. Now, you can go to FDIC.gov and you can download data. I mean, you don't have to download just one bank. You could download 50 banks. You could put different criteria in there, okay? You can download as much as you need and sort it as you feel appropriate. I'm going to help you a little bit with that. As we go forward, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what you may want to look for, okay? But an RI is an income statement, okay? Now, a bank that's losing money, $3 million a quarter, probably not a good bank to call and ask them if they want to sell some distressed assets, okay? Change in risk-based capital. Remember we talked about capital. When I started talking about capital, banks that are losing capital, probably not a good bank you want to contact, because when you buy a pool of notes from them, they're going to have to take a hit. All right? Charge-offs and recoveries. I like to look at charge-offs and recoveries to see if a bank is very active with their assets. It'll tell you whether their loans are coming through and they're recognizing charge-offs, okay? And you may be able to use that as a selling point, okay? Changes in allowance for loan loss, lease, and losses. That's, from an accounting perspective, that's your allowance for loan loss, and it shows how much money they're putting into the allowance, okay, to build up a reserve to offset their non-performing assets. Okay? A bank that's putting a lot of money in the reserve is anticipating higher losses. When they sell that portfolio, they can pull that reserve back in. Loan losses, loans and leases, TDR. Excuse me. Loans and leases, TDR. TDR is an abbreviation for troubled debt restructuring. Okay? Banks that modify loans and change the rates and terms. A lot of people are making notes, and I'll work with Sue, okay? If everybody just wants to sit back and watch, and if you have questions or something you want to reference, I'll get together with Sue and see if we can't make this available to everyone so that, you'll have it. All right. So, loans and leases, TDR. If you see a lot of loans listed as TDRs, that means that lending institution is pretty aggressive and has a pretty decent workout staff, and they're heavily working their loans themselves, okay? If you see very little TDRs, it's not because people don't need relief. It's because they don't have the staffing to review the loans. Now, if you're buying a pool, you want a pool of loans that haven't been worked very hard because it's easy to make them performing. If they've already worked them very hard, okay, then you're probably getting the back end of the deal. Loans that have already been scrubbed once or twice, excuse me. All right, line 3, ORE, it's called OREO, okay? I'm from old school and I call it OREO, all right? OREO breakdown, it'll tell you whether they have residential, commercial, A&D, acquisition and development. It'll tell you the types of OREO they have and the dollar amount. You don't have to guess. You don't have to call anybody and ask. It's all right out there. If you're looking for banks with large quantities of commercial OREO, you can download information, sort it by state, by risk-based tier one capital, and et cetera. And you'll have all that information downloaded to you. You don't have to make one phone call. It's right there. Past due, non-accrual loans and leases. It's another very important piece of information when you're looking at banks. You know, they have an abundance of non-accrual loans. Maybe you can help them with some of those loans. Maybe you could take a pool of loans, free up some of their time. Schedule RCR, Reg Capital. That tells you what their capital position is. Remember, that's in my opinion, that's going to be a key indicator. Okay? All right, so let's move forward. All right, capital requirements. The FDIC requires that you have a Tier 1 capital requirement of 4%. I'm not about to attempt to do the mathematical equation to come up with Tier 1 capital requirements. Just, it's out there if you're looking for it on the FDIC Gov. All right, but Tier 1 capital, minimum 4%. If you got a bank that has 6% Tier 1 capital, don't call them. They sell, you know, if they sell your loan and they go below, sell a pool of loans and go below 4%, that's not a good day. Okay, so don't call them. Tier 1 risk-based capital, 5%, risk-based capital, 8%. If I were going to look at lending institutions that I thought may have the ability to sell, probably the first thing that I would start with would be Tier 1 capital, 12% plus. Okay? It's a pretty healthy bank. All right? Now, some other criteria I'd probably look for is a bank that's been profitable at least the last 3 quarters. A bank that non-accrual loans are increasing. They have limited TDR loans. Charge-offs are probably increasing. And the reason charge-offs are increasing is because they have limited TDR loans. Because rather than modifying the loans or doing forbearance agreements or whatever the case is, they're actually charging off. The loans are just going through foreclosure and charge off. There's not a lot of activity there. Okay? And REO balance is increasing. All right? That means they're foreclosing, taking REO balances in.